Thank you for joining me, brother. I really appreciate it. I really do. I
Thank you
know
for the invite.
so much is gonna so much is gonna unfold. I know that. Obviously I know a lot more. I have a lot of people around me that know you well, and they just vouch for you until the sun rises and sun sets. It's like till the cows come home, kind of. They really do, and that's not always common, Like they really I can see it in their eyes when they speak about you and the transformation that's occurred for them in their lives. So we met last November. Feels longer for me, but last
Wow.
November we did meet, but we didn't spend so much time in the same containers because it was at Human Work. Shout out to Human Work, also coming in yeah, probably a couple of weeks before this goes out. And yeah, we met there, and I'd like to know how that experience was for you, you know?
Look, yeah, it was quite magical, frankly speaking. I'm more familiar or more used to leading men's retreats.
Mm,
And so being in a co-ed space with men and women and really dancing with these shadows and with these energies was just such a gift. It's so I mean, my first thought during some of the big shadow processes that we were leading were like, oh my goodness, our women are so powerful. They're just so powerful, and so bringing these energies together brought a lot of healing because
yeah.
and openness for healing. Like because there was a some women got hurt by men and vice versa, and so it was uh, it offered really a window into what could it be when we actually deal with our respective baggage and when we move through these processes with grace and compassion and open heart. So of course, like that experience was quite yeah, quite magical, quite fascinating. I was very grateful to be part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree. Where there's triggers, there can be healing, and different dynamics, different energies, different internal energies can yeah be really brought to the surface in those containers with such different dynamics at play. And you can
Yeah.
work with that, in that space. Yeah, it is amazing. It continues to be hard to describe, actually. Continues to be hard to put into words the magic that can happen and you'll know as a facilitator. I got asked the other day, like I was doing a workshop and they're like, so what are we actually doing here? And I mean I can describe it, but it's not really gonna say what we do. It's not gonna actually sound like much, but
Yeah.
when we do it, it's gonna feel like a lot.
You-
And
you- I live in Cairo, Egypt. I've been living there for, I think I'm starting my 15th year or something like that. It is home. And the Sufi masters often remind us that you can't explain the sweetness of honey. And I feel like this is what we're trying to do here. How was this experience? It was like, well, that honey it was sweet and there was like some hint of flour and this and this. It's like you can't, you have to taste it. And this is
yeah.
what the masters remind us. It's like we can talk about it all day, but unless you taste that honey, unless you find yourself in the midst of a process where you have an opportunity to just like open your heart because that safety is here, that container is being held in a way that is done with integrity and safety and skills, which I would hope all containers should offer.
Mm,
We'll talk about the standards also maybe
yes.
potentially of facilitation in a few moments. I think just magic happens. It was really for me, it was seeing how the nature of this gathering men and women together. There's a purpose for men only spaces and for women only spaces, and there's also a magic to being together. And I could see even during some moments of confrontation of confrontational practices. Like I know in my team there was just so many women were like, I want this scary guy, in front of me, and I want to, and it was just like, and having
Yeah.
This guy who comes and say, I'm all yours right now. I'm an instrument to your healing,
Hmm.
and do what you need to do. We got you. And when I say we, I mean like I as a person who's standing in front of you and every single person in that circle, cheering for you and holding that space for like, just just talking about it, I'm having goosebumps because I'm like, this is so unique. I feel like unfortunately, I think most people never get to experience such a space. No, wouldn't, don't you think?
A
Like I
hun-
think it's quite rare.
yeah. It's just not normalized, and people would be forgiven for thinking it doesn't exist because yeah, you walk around and you talk to a lot of people. I do, and it's sad actually. There's sadness there because even just standing in a circle is not normal, and that can be an edge for people when they are revealed just in their fullness without everything can be seen in a circle, and it's and you can see everything in a circle, and there's just a magic to that, contributing to something which has isn't hierarchical, and yeah,
But that,
requires you to step in.
yeah, and that's the power of it, right? Of being witnessed in that, in your vulnerability, in your space, in that space with your fears, with your anger, with whatever is showing up. But that's also the paradox, I feel like, of our societies, which are so individualistic. And I'm talking about primarily Western societies, where it's these are we live in, I mean, Westerners live in such like individualistic societies, and yet how often do you find yourself in the center of that space in an intentional and meaningful way? You know
Mm.
what I mean? Like it's always about me, and what I need and mine, like what I want to get and like how I should benefit from this and being able to buy all the things I want or my ego wants. But how many spaces are you actually being like where you are actually seen and witnessed and supported and loved, and being reminded that yeah, or you deserve to, you can just be yourself. You don't have to be what you think you should be right now or what society told you or taught you, what you should be. And so it's funny. It's funny. It's no, it's sad actually that in such individualistic societies
Yeah.
actually are not seen. I think most people are never seen actually. It's
Yeah.
this cloak of
It's
invisibility, you know.
yeah, yeah, the individual thrives in a collective experience. I noticed this in dance. Dancing on your own is very different to dancing in a collective experience and contributing to that space and co-creating something beautiful. Individuals thrive within that, but when we isolate, we insulate ourselves and we isolate ourselves at the same time. We protect ourselves. We wear comfy clothes and we wear have insulated homes and protect ourselves, but we isolate at the same time. So it is a paradox. It is a paradox.
Yeah.
Can you
But I don't
ground
think,
us into who you are and what you do? I think it's time for that because how do you introduce yourself and yeah, and we'll move forward from there because there's so many places I want to go in this conversation with how we start to normalize this work and how we bridge it, into other spaces and everything you're doing in the world, which is fascinating. But I want to get to know a little bit more about you and how you show up.
mm, that's such a simple question, and yet I never know what to answer because it's like, oh, what facets of me? I often say, I'm a father of two.
Hmm.
I'm a husband to my wife for the past 20 years. I'm a student of Sufism, um, and and the rest of the time, I'm a student of life, and what I mean by that is that I'm on a journey of, I want to say, reconnecting to myself as a practitioner specialized in nervous system regulation. I teach people how to reset their nervous system. I teach practitioners and facilitators
Hmm.
how to master the beautiful art of somatic trauma healing, which is a one way to say, how can we lean into the wisdom of the nervous system? How can we remember that conscious understanding of what's going on with me is not a pre-requirement to my healing? Meaning, my body has the answers. My body carries the pain and the wounds, and it also has, the healing in it. And so in the, I've been doing that for a couple of decades, on this journey for a couple of decades, worked with a variety of people dealing with a variety of issues ranging from HIV and AIDS to cancer to immune disorders to trauma to sexual abuse and domestic abuse and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, it's as you know, and as many of your listeners may know, what's traumatic is not the nature of the event itself, but rather our response to it,
Yeah.
right? And so that's what I do. You know how we say you teach what you need the most typically.
Do
So
you know what? That was one thing I was coming in with this with. I was like, what in Pierre's story does he need? Why is he need this more than the people he works with?
that I don't know, my brother. This is really, I feel like it's a divine gift that was given to me because many years ago I studied international management. And then as I was studying it, I was like, I'm not sure this is for me, but I'll just keep going for a little bit. And then eventually, very soon I transitioned very early in my career, to working in social development and leadership skills. And then eventually, as I realized that all this work with people living with HIV, I worked almost for a decade with the United Nations Development Program in the Arab world. And I realized that the most transformative experiences were not the ones that were actually providing technical skills or facts, or like, you can
Yeah.
tell people that they're safe until they turn blue, that they're not going to feel it. And if their body, unless their nervous system and their emotions is aligned with that truth, this you in French we say it's like peeing in a violin. It's like you're doing nothing. It's like, which is a weird expression, but well, my point is the idea really of saying,
Yeah.
once I'm able to connect to the power of these emotions and these sensations and the wisdom of that nervous system, that's when the magic happens. And so for me, the more I practice, the more I lead people in individually, group containers, blah, blah, blah. This is I'm realizing that the more we surrender, the better. And I hate to sound cliche. And it's like what you were saying earlier. It's like it's what do you mean? Like you can't really understand unless you've surrendered, but to give yourself the gift of actually feeling your fears, what a
Yeah.
gift. Because that's when I know for me, I often mention that my anger was both my poison and my medicine, right? My relationship with anger, my lack of my fear of being angry because of, growing up with like blah, 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 some scary father, blah, blah, blah. There's stories to it. But at the end of the day, it had shaped me into somebody who was reluctant to connect to my anger. And so I used to say, I'm not angry. What a ridiculous thing to say when I think about it. And I'm saying
Yeah.
that with compassion. And I'm saying that to anybody who's listening and who's like, yeah, no, I'm not stressed out. I'm not angry. I'm not sad. I'm not this. And then part of me is like, then are you really truly living life? Are you really experiencing the breadth of, like, all this wide range of human experiences? Because for me, that's what it's about. And maybe in closing, that's to answer your question, that's what I'm doing. What I wish to do is for me to be able to feel as fully as possible,
Yeah.
to and to experience as fully as possible. And I've realized that for that, it's not about me like teaching or how to be grateful and how to be happy and how to be content. That comes, but that comes also as a result of me actually connecting to my grief, to my anger, to my sadness, right? To that, like I think Osho says, the sadness gives roots and happiness gives branches, right? And so, and the deeper the roots, the higher the branches. And for me, that's such an amazing and simple explanation of what we do when I work with people, and I want to work with myself, which is like I'm growing these roots. I'm learning how to hold my sadness, my anger, all the emotional baggage I've had, so that these branches can grow. Because I trust, like you must have the most amazing people and enlightened people I've met, or people who've been through the most horrendous shit in their life.
Mm.
in some weird ways. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Through that, and then
Totally.
suddenly they become, kind of like the version 2.0 of themselves. It's like, all right, all that post-traumatic growth phenomena that kicks in, where they kind of wake up again, back to the Sufi masters, like die before you die. Just don't wait for your death before you actually before you wake up.
Mm.
Am I making
Yeah.
sense here? Just
Absolutely. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. Just you have to go there to know there, and that is true with all with the emotional landscape and the spectrum of what it means to be human. I believe that those that have alchemized their pain and turned it into fertile ground for others to not only learn from, but to be inspired by. And the anger and the fear, I think a lot of people are sometimes forced into feeling it all. They don't have a choice. They have to feel the pain. They have to feel um, all the emotions, and then if they are able to create a better story around why that's happened, that seems to be the marker of of transmuting it. I'd love
yeah.
to know. I'd love to know your thoughts on that because it's one of the biggest questions I have is like, what does it take to change? Why do some people perpetuate, continue the same destructive behavior to themselves, to others? And what differentiates that to other people that are able to really understand where it's coming from and what the root is, to then to to go back there and to feel it, to have the awareness, to then accept it, and then to choose a better outcome. Like, what have you understood in your time
Mhm.
that answers that? Of course, if you put that in a bottle and sent it around the world, we would have a different planet. But
Yeah, but this is such a great question because a lot of people do get stuck. As we speak, I just finished facilitating a 6-week program for cancer patients. Been
mm,
working for over a decade with cancer patients, and one of my programs is around post-traumatic growth, how to facilitate post-traumatic growth. How can I, rise to a higher level of functioning? Because everybody will be slapped in the face by life, one way or the other. Like, so, I used to say, well, I work with people dealing with trauma. Like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, everybody trauma. So, you know what I mean? It's like 99.9% of the world population
yeah,
with trauma. Whether you call it that or not, it doesn't really matter. I don't care if you call that trauma, wounds, challenges, life challenges, like put it in whatever, healing system you want, and use whatever terms that help you do that. But to answer your question, I think the making sense of it, because you talk about the story and kind of making sense of the story, that reminds me really of The Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl's book around,
yeah,
search for meaning. And it's interesting because as I think about making meaning of what has happened, I feel like this is too many people go into trying to make meaning out of what happened, and they forget that you actually have to sit with it first.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, so many people are like, they come to me and they're like, why? And I'm like, well, first of all, there's not one reason why. Second of all, even if you were to figure out the reason or some of the reasons, that doesn't mean that that's going to help you move through that process. So my short answer to your question
yeah.
is bandwidth. Bandwidth that allows us to actually be with it. And that's why I feel like, that's
Mm,
why I said earlier, like, our nervous system, we are designed to heal. Let me repeat that just to let that sink in for everybody listening here. We are designed to heal. You are designed to heal. And I don't mean that in a cliche woo-woo hippie way. I mean, like, when you look at the nervous system, providing that the conditions are gathered, meaning providing that we feel safe enough to feel it, then our body will want to restore balance and safe. Will want to restore safety and balance, right? Let me rephrase that. Providing that we feel safe, then our body will want to restore safe balance.
mm,
And so, for us to be able to build that bandwidth and feel what we need to feel, that's we need to feel safe. And I think that's what most people don't have. They don't feel safe enough. And they don't have a space where they're able to expand their bandwidth. Because a lot of people are walking around with surrounded by walls, right? They're in like with and barricades, emotional barricades of like, I got hurt. I got, I got potentially, people maybe have hit me, dumped me, like betrayed me, et cetera, et cetera. And so I don't want to feel that anymore. It's just too much. And so building walls.
Mm.
And sure, on the short term, that may work, right? There is a purpose for all these defense mechanisms. And that's what also we need to normalize is that it's normal for that stress response is normal. It's actually required for survival. So anybody who's like, I'm working to live a stress-free life, I'm like, doesn't sound like the kind of life I want, like because I want to feel my stress, I want to feel my fear, I want to feel my anger. I need to feel all of that so I can a full version of me. So how do you build safety? We go back to what we were talking about. It has to be intentional. It doesn't happen by accident.
Mm.
It like there's the internal safety and then there's the external safety. Like hopefully your environment contributes to that sense of safety because if I'm homeless, if I don't have access to food, if like who cares about my emotional baggage? Who cares about processing this stuff? This is all that self-actualization on Maslow pyramid. Maslow's pyramid is pretty up there. So we don't, let's first take care of basic needs and then we can talk about, then we can have that conversation around processing what I need to process. But when I say bandwidth is the most important, is because what I've realized is that my job, and I'll speak at least about my own healing, but I feel like it happens for most of the people I work with.
Hmm.
Our goal is not my goal is not to make myself heal or heal myself, because in my book, healing happens from within and from above. It's a divine gift. It's God's gift, and it's also and that gift for me translates in the nervous system. That's why when you see people feeling safe enough, say to feel the anger or the sadness, then you notice that there's a settling. You notice that eventually they can hold it, and then you see a deep exhale. You see the body starting to tremor, right? You see the body starting to say, "Okay, I don't need to hold that anymore," and that is not something conscious. What is conscious is the step prior to that, which is like, what do I need to create in terms of the conditions for me to be able to hold that without being overwhelmed? And that's why these gatherings, like the retreats we've been talking about, are so important. Or these intentional spaces where it's like, we here, we're going to make space for your anger, for your grief, for your sadness, for your anxiety, and we're going to help you hold that. And what's amazing to me, 20 years into it, it's like that's I don't want to say that's all we need to do, but that's the primary
Yeah.
intervention for me as a practitioner is this: teaching myself and teaching you how to feel things without feeling overwhelmed, because typically it's going to be kind of a bell curve. It's
Yeah.
going to be, oh, this is a lot. I don't know if I want to be there. Shall I stay there? It's a little too much. And eventually at some point it's going to peak. And then people are going to be like, yeah, it's okay. I can feel it. I can hold it. And then that's when the body's like, it's okay. Now you heard me, you saw me, you witnessed me. I don't need to yell anymore at you. Right. And then that activation in the body starts to become less and less. And that's when we start healing. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. What gets in the way of that for people mostly? When they don't feel safe within, but they're to some
Yeah.
extent not aware of it. So they're looking outside themselves to justify why it's not safe. But they think it's out there when really then they don't feel safe within themselves.
Yeah. Or they're looking for an expert, or they're looking for a pill, or they're looking for somebody who has the answer. When truly, as I said earlier, I think the theme here today is like, look, you have all the answers. Your body has all the answers. So stop looking all around you and start looking within,
Mm.
because that's where the magic happens. I mean, for me, and I'm assuming like for you and so many people listening, for me, that journey of looking and exploring inwards, looking at within myself, has become a spiritual journey. I always try to remind myself and try to share with my clients and patients that I think any meaningful healing journey becomes spiritual at some point. Like, that's why I'm saying when you start to connect to, when you start to hold it, and you're like, it's okay. Maybe there's a reason why I'm so angry. Maybe there's a reason why I'm so sad. And maybe I don't need to know what that is, but I can just feel it. I can just trust that it's there for a reason. Then what happens again is that the nervous system starts to shift. And so to answer your question,
Mm.
why aren't people able to do that? I think it has to do really with the environment that we live in, the
Yeah.
societies. We're
Yeah.
disconnected. Like, we're just like, most of the time, we're just like
Yeah.
scrolling zombies. We think that the thousands of friends or millions of followers that we have, are going to make any difference, when really it's just, there's no real connection. I mean, when you ask most men, and I don't know if your circle of friends and my circle of friends is representative truly, because I'd like to think that you and I have people that where we can go deep with,
Yeah.
but for most people, they don't have somebody to talk to, and even if they have somebody to talk to, they don't have somebody who is going to witness them without trying to fix them. You know
Mm.
what I mean? Like, and I've had that question. My daughter the other day asked me, because a friend of hers, my daughter's 15, and a friend of hers lost her mother, and she asked me, because she knows I work with people dealing with grief, and she was like, what can I do to help her? What can I tell her to make her feel better? And I was like, why do you think you need to make her feel better? And what makes you think that you need to do something? What if you were just to what if you were to just hold her hand? What if you were to just hug her and tell her this must be hard, and I can imagine what you're going through, instead of being like, you're gonna be okay, and well, you still have your father, and all these like platitudes that people tend to tell each other because they don't know what to say. So the environment, disconnected societies, and I think also societies that have lost the capacity to really go and have a meaningful, deep conversation.
Mm.
We don't have these. I mean, these intentional spaces are becoming more and more rare. I'd love to think that they're coming back. Like, I don't know. It's just because of, I'm projecting what's happening in my life onto the world, but I'd like to think there's more and more. There's kind of an awakening. Actually, I do believe there's an
Yeah.
awakening of people saying it's time. Like, this is not working the way we've been living. We need to come back together into communities that are connected, that are supportive of each other, and instead of trying to fix each other, just showing up for
Yeah.
each other without judgment and without trying to solve each other's problems. Just let's just be. Let's just. So I think that's why people don't have it, because it's hard to find. You know.
Yeah, there's an argument for both, right? What I do see is the extremes getting further apart of like the people really just being transforming and stepping
Yeah.
into new versions and more powerful versions of themselves. Like the framing of the Buddha and how many people he was able to um support and provide incredible insights to. w- I may reach more people in my life. Obviously, his teachings and his wisdom was carrying on for years and many years. But like we have the capacity and the propensity for that with all the things in our lives, the technology we have. Like we have there are many people reaching incredible amounts and supporting people in new extents. Like it's incredible. but then the extreme of the disconnection is happening too, and we're so exposed to that as
Yeah.
well, which isn't necessarily a healthy thing.
Yeah.
Um,
And there's a lot, and if you allow me a quick sprinkle here, I think there's also, I hate to sound judgmental, but I think there's a lot of shit out there, like,
yeah,
a lot of shitty work and unsafe work that's being offered. Not not from a place of like, wanting to mess people up or a lot of people have, good intentions and a big heart and they want to help. And yet, for me, I feel like sometimes it's dangerous. I mean, if you drop in one-on-one with a friend of yours, yeah, that's one thing. And
mm,
you can space and you can hug and can do whatever you need to do in that moment. But as a facilitator, I see a lot of people who are like, it's okay, we designed to heal. Let's just go into that space. All right, everybody, just let's just feel it. Do you know how much shit is gonna come up? And my next question is, do you have the capacity as a facilitator to hold that space without re-traumatizing that person? Do you understand what's happening to your nervous system? Do you understand how to hold it? Do you know how to bring that person back full circle? Do you know when you need to it's okay to make it a little bit more intense? You know when you need to slow things down because you're about to lose that person?
mm,
I've seen, and I'm sure you've seen, in some retreats, like stuff that was done that shouldn't have been done. And
yeah,
and I that's that there's also so yes, I like you, I see the extremes. I see the wellness industry that's booming. And
mm,
yet within that industry, at the risk of sounding a little pompous, there's a lot of, a lot of services where and people, I wouldn't send my family, I would have sent my friends. I would be like, look,
yeah.
this is not the place where you want to be. That's the first thing. The second thing also, which is maybe a longer conversation for later,
Big sprinkle.
big sprinkle, but it's an important sprinkle, is I think a lot of people make shit up as well. And one of the reasons why I think our society is right now kind of disconnected is because I do think we're disconnected from the divine.
Yeah,
We've disconnected from God so deeply. And I speak myself as somebody who grew up as an atheist and who, for some weird reason, eventually found my way into Islam. you
yeah,
know, and and that's been such an important part of my journey, of my healing journey. And so I think it's dangerous when people make shit up. That's also
absolutely.
what I would say, because you're messing with energies and
Yeah,
traumas that, unless you know what you're doing, please don't do it. It's better for somebody to be within this armor, even though they may not feel much, but at least they can function, than, to walk around just completely naked and vulnerable and they don't know what to do. So for me, it's an invitation, a reminder also for people to look into traditions, so yeah, yes to exploring different things, but
yeah.
I
But that,
personally feel like there's, traditional, like prophetic traditions are here for a reason. These are healing paths, or at
yeah,
least in my experience, as I explore the path of, sorry for the big sprinkle, but that for me, that path of a that path of Islam offered me so many healing practices, whether it's the prayers and the meditation and the chanting and the fasting and and the practice of gratitude and etc. Like all of it was kind of like, it's like a package that says, here, try that. And when you're ready, go to the next level and then go to the next level and then
mm,
go to the next level. And I see people jumping around a lot nowadays and they're not really committing to anything. And it's just like somebody saying, well, on Monday, once I'm gonna work my legs and then maybe another day I'm gonna work my arms. And then they complain at the end of the day. They're like, how come I'm not building muscles? You're not building muscles because you're not consistent in your practice, in your workout. And it's the same for healing.
mm.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. It's a huge
something, find
point.
a path and go for it.
Yeah, I definitely want to understand a little bit more about your connection to Islam and like what has supported you in that space and rooting into a tradition and a lineage almost that's really helped you. I want to dive into that. I think it was a really big point when you said that around safety within the human,
Mhm.
um, it ends up anyone who goes on that healing journey to feel more ends up being connected to something outside of themselves, and it's a big point, and that's what you could say is a spiritual pursuit of some sort. You're more open to the unknown, let's say, because you feel safe enough. You don't have to be so guarded, right? Would you agree?
I agree, but I agree,
This,
and again,
yeah, I'm just kind of trickling on this point that you make, 'cause it's huge actually, that I've not really considered in the same light. Because why have we got so much disease in the world? And it is because of this detachment from a spiritual connection, of a lack of meaning, of a lack of, the hyper individualistic nature of, well, everything can be measured and understood, and it's me, and I'm the most important, and etc.
I'm entitled to being happy, and if I'm not happy with
Yeah,
something, it's
yeah,
like
very very
who
egocentric.
the
Yeah,
fuck told you that you're supposed to be happy all the time?
yeah,
That's an exhausting thing to from like I hear it a lot
mm,
from people because and that irritates me because I guess there's part of me also that irritates that triggers that part of me that probably wants it. But it's like who said right now you're supposed to be happy. Maybe you are supposed to be scared. Maybe you are
yeah.
supposed to feel that.
It's
You're
pop
supposed
pop
maybe
pop
like grief,
culture,
like
because
sadness.
it's in every song,
Exactly.
right? And in every movie, and it's the pop culture which is so heavily influenced by, and it's really tragic, and toxic, and it feeds into all of our
There's
psychology from young ages and in programming. But yeah, let's dive back into this piece around the lineage, and what I
well, so
believe.
sorry.
Yeah, yeah,
Before the lineage, I just want to go back to that safety because I think for yes, that's why I said safe enough for us to dive in, not safe to dive in, safe enough. Like as in there's a part of me that's like
yeah,
I'm scared, but I think but I'm willing to go there. And I feel like what allows for that willingness to go there, to explore, to go deeper, to feel into that anger, grief, sadness, whatever it is that I've been avoiding in the past, is that sense of that willingness to surrender.
yeah,
Surrender to what? You know, that
yeah,
that's the question. So surrender to what? So yes, surrender potentially to the container and to the people and to the sorry and to the wisdom of the facilitators and blah blah. But at the end of the day, for me, it's also surrender that to the universe, to God, to Creator, to what call it whatever you want. But there needs to be an understanding that it's like a trust fall, into the cosmos. It's like okay, I've been feeling that anger, and right now I'm just gonna let myself fall back into that feeling, into that experience, trusting that hopefully I'll come out, on the other way a better person. And I think many of us do not trust, and we're lacking faith in ourselves, faith in our capacity to heal. And I think faith in, a lack of faith also in Creator. We feel like we need to control that healing process. And that's the last thing you should be doing. And I know it's kind of paradoxical because we're telling people
yeah. To take
intentional
control.
space, take
Yeah,
control, sign up for that workshop, go do sessions. Like that sounds like controlling, but at the end, when you're in it, control is the last thing you want because if you
yeah.
try to control that healing process, then your ego is getting in the way
You have expectations.
because you don't know what is best for you. I don't know what is best for me, but I trust that what is going to happen is best for me.
Yeah, when you get out the way. Yeah. Okay. And
That's
there's
here.
a there's a big piece in here around the facilitation of these spaces, and rightly brought in because yes, uh, breath work, for example, a huge one when people are going through
Yeah.
real, real moments. I'm guided back into their traumas, and then what happens. So I want to make space for that piece as well, because it's so important, even for myself, using this space right now to be called into it a little bit more, and I really want that for myself. So we can go there first, or we can go into the more esoteric teachings of what you've learned.
It's your podcast, bro. We
Okay, yeah,
do
let's
whatever
get,
we want.
as we've touched upon it and not gone there. Yeah, I'd love to make space for this um, Sufism, like what does that, what does even that mean for you? And yeah, you've mentioned God a few times. Like, what is? Because I don't check out. I check in when I hear it, but then I'm like, it's going to be such a subjective experience for so many people. But there's common things.
Yeah.
So, what does it mean for you?
Mm. So for for a bit of context, I alluded earlier that I grew up. I'm French, as people can probably tell by my name and my accent. The and so as any good French person, I grew up like a pretty fundamentalist atheist, anti-religious person, and because God has the best sense of humor, it was eventually I was sent to I traveled a lot, and at some point I landed in Egypt,
Mm.
um, actually over 20 years ago, and I haven't been, you know, these 20 years all the time in Egypt, but 20 years ago I arrived in Egypt, and then I start to witness what it's like for people to actually understand that what we call in Arabic this dunya, this life. There's the dunya and then the akhirah. The dunya is this life, and the akhirah is the hereafter.
Mm.
And and it was so interesting for me to see that 5 times a day people were like, all right, you know what? I'm just gonna pause everything I'm doing right now, and I'm gonna connect to something greater. I'm gonna go and pray. There was beauty in that. There was beauty in people, the month of Ramadan, which I mean, for the past 20 years, I've been practicing, like, I've been a practicing Muslim. Yeah, it's been 20 years actually. And and for me, it was just amazing to understand that, like, what an interesting experience. So, and then all these practices added up. And as a practitioner, I started to see all these practices, including, for example, Sufi chanting, which for
Ah,
me is a very important piece of my religious and spiritual practice and also of my healing, because you can see it as a way to build a bridge with the divine. But if you study it, you were talking about the breath. If you study chanting and Sufi chanting just from the standpoint of breathing, it's an amazing practice.
yeah.
It's an amazing practice. Like, it's going to regulate, and then you start to look into, okay, how many seconds does it take? And then eventually we start to speed up. A lot of the time we speed up, we slow down, we speed up, we slow down. You're like, that sounds a little bit like Tumo, maybe, like, but like, and so it's like, ooh, 5 to 6 seconds, maybe, which is the optimal, length for your breathing, which leads to like 5.5 to 6 seconds per inhale and exhale, which leads to about 5.5 breath per minute. And it's like, oh shit, that's about the perfect breath. If there was such a thing as a perfect breath, that would be it. And these traditional practices bring that. And so they're not telling you, well, you need to do this because it's going to help you with your, I mean, it's not just a clinical
Prescription.
approach of stress
Yeah.
management. Just like, and here it's a little bit me poking at Western culture, taking mindfulness and uprooting it from its spiritual tradition. Because I think it's both disrespectful and counterproductive. And I think we also stealing ourselves, or we preventing ourselves from connecting to a major component of these practices, which is the spiritual aspect of it. Um, so for me, all these practices are actually profoundly healing practices. So whether you do it for God or whether you do it for
Hmm.
your nervous system and for your health, this is in all cases for me they were tremendously beneficial.
Yeah. Devotion is a word that comes to mind. This is a big aspect of giving yourself up to something
Yeah,
regularly,
and
consistently.
yeah, regulate consistently, and maybe even remembering. That's the word, remembrance. There's like, and there's a lot of different, for me, branches when we talk about remembrance of who am I, remembrance of my own divine nature. One of my favorite quote is Master Rumi's quote is like, stop acting so small. You're the universe in ecstatic motion. And that's the quote that I'm reminding, like, every now and then I remind myself of that. I'm like, why am I acting so small? I'm the universe in ecstatic motion. I'm made of star dust. It's not like there's nothing woo-woo about this. We know we're made of
Yeah.
stardust. How fucking amazing is that? Do we understand that? Do we realize this? And so for us to be able to remember our own divine nature, I think it's such an important piece. And so, but that remembrance take work. That's the thing I think that's missing in our societies. We get so caught up, or at least I get so caught up, and I used to get so caught up in this dunya, in this life here, in trying to, I need to pay rent and I need to make money and I need to do this and I need to do, like, I need to do, right? And it's like, yeah, but when do I pause and really tap into a different level of awareness and consciousness? When do I remind myself that yeah, I am divine. I'm magnificent. You know, I
Mm.
mean, my body is just like the likelihood that this works well is just so, like for my body to function, there's just so many things that need to happen right now for the universe to actually not collapse onto itself. There's just magic needs to happen. So you want to call it magic, you want to call it God. But yeah, I do feel like we've lost that sense of devotion, and we've lost that sense of responsibility, realizing that, well, this body of mine, it's just I have, it's my responsibility to take care of myself. I was given that body, and it's up to me to, I will be dying soon, hopefully not too soon, God willing, but we born, we die. And what do we do in between? That's the big question.
Yeah.
And there's obviously, many traditions have other plans for the afterlife, which is another conversation. But for me, the question is really, how can I a regent? That's the word I was looking for. How can I be a regent here in this dunya, in this life, and be of service? What is my responsibility? Is my goal to be happy, or is my goal to be of service? Because these are two very different life perspectives. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like society is selling us that, like, you should have this, you should have that, you should be entitled to this, you should be entitled to that. But when truly it should be like, well, actually, you should try to heal yourself. You should try to know thyself, right? Like, oh, so many traditions are telling us, know thyself, know yourself. You want to know, you want to connect to God, you want to connect to the divine, you want to connect to something greater than you. Again, it's not around you, it's within you. That's why I was saying earlier, for me and so many people I know, this healing journey has become a spiritual journey,
Yeah.
because that's what, because you realize it's not in your hands, because you realize the more you let go of that control, the easier it becomes and the more magical it becomes. And so where does that magic come from? It's up to you. But that
Yeah.
remembrance, that it is really that remembrance, trust, devotion, for me, faith, or very important things. And
Yeah.
faith itself, like, look at research. I work, I've done research on post-traumatic growth with some big hospitals in
Mm.
in Los Angeles, California. Faith is just such a fantastic resource.
Yeah.
People heal faster when they have faith. That's the bottom line, right? And I understand that's not something you can, like, a lot of people are like, well, I don't
Can't,
believe, I
yeah,
don't
you
believe.
can't
I'm like,
just
okay,
say I have faith now.
yeah, it's like, okay, fine, I'll have faith right now. But that's why I'm saying faith doesn't come with just like a wanting to have faith, but it comes with, I speak for myself, with a self-exploration
Yeah.
of
How do
like
you
deeper
cultivate
and
more
deeper
faith?
and deeper. And how do you cultivate it? With practices.
Surrender
And
control.
the secret, that's one of my sheikh, one of my teachers said that one day. It was like, the secret is in the practices. He was like, stop reading books. The secret is in the practices. It's not about your conscious understanding. It's not about you trying to figure things out with that tiny mind of yours. It's about you connecting to your heart. So maybe to close that chapter of that conversation here, what is Islam and what is Sufism to me? It's a purification of the heart. That's what we do. That's the goal, or that's the intention, is to purify your heart, to let go of resentment, to let go of anger, to let go of judgments, to remove all these masks and all these filters and
Yeah.
hope that, and I don't believe there's a, it's, as we say, it's about the journey, right? It's not about the destination. And so I don't think there's an end to it.
Yeah.
And I truly don't look forward to the end of it. It's not that I don't look forward to the end of it. It's like I've come to a place where I'm like, I find the journey so fulfilling and exciting because it's like every layer is like, oh, that's fascinating. Oh, I still have that trigger coming up. What's what's up with that? Let me explore it. Okay,
Yeah.
this feels more at peace. Let me move on to the next version of me. So that's why when I'm like people telling me I'm done with my father wound, I'm done with my mother wound, I'm like, okay, maybe, or maybe,
Oh
or
my
maybe
God.
there's way more to learn from it. So it is about the practices, and it is about purifying your hearts
Yeah.
because, and again, that's specifically for in the tradition of Islam. We say the only thing that will serve you on the last day is a peaceful heart, nothing else. Not your money, not your
Yeah.
belongings, not your connections, not your friends, not your parents. The only thing that will truly help you is a pure heart, right? A heart that's at peace.
Yeah.
That's what I'm working towards.
Yeah. One of my favorite, thank you for that. And one of my favorite quotes is don't go looking for love, remove everything that's blocking it. And it is about this purification process, coming back into an open heart. And again, feeds into everything you've touched upon around surrounding ourselves with all these walls that we create to protect us, to stop us from getting hurt ultimately. But the more you forgive, the more you release the resentment, because it's only going to perpetuate that stuck state, which people can relate to. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. I feel it. Go on.
No, I just want to say, and it's important also to have compassion for us being stuck there. I was stuck, and every now and then I get stuck, in these states. The goal is not to not get stressed out, but is or to not get traumatized or to not get sad. That's not the goal. The goal is not get stuck in these states.
Yeah.
That's the key word.
Yeah,
Stuck. When
because the
you get
nervous
stuck,
system, we want to go into each and every one aspect of the nervous system, but not stay
yeah.
there, right?
Exactly. And that's true. I feel like that's true resilience. And that's what too many people have trouble understanding, or maybe have not been explained, clearly before that, they feel like, I don't want to, this is, I don't want to feel this. I don't want to feel that. And it's like, but wait, that's actually the goal. Don't you want to be fully human? Like
Yeah.
for you to be able, so that you can stop dealing with the anxiety, paradoxically, the goal is for you to lean into that anxiety, lean into it. I have two kids, and I remember when my kids were small and they were throwing tantrums, me being like, no, it's not happening. I'm not dealing with this would not help the tantrum.
Mm.
What helped the tantrum is just me being fully present and be like, okay, what's happening? I'm listening
Yeah.
to you. And somebody was just like, all right, just go for it. I'm here. I'm witnessing. I'm helping you get to the end of that tantrum. Our body does the same.
Mm.
Our bodies, they throw tantrums. The tantrum may be digestive issues, maybe translating into sleep problems, autoimmune disorders. Eventually, if we don't listen, it becomes a little louder. You might get cancer. People get cancer. People get like something big. The less we listen, the louder our body needs to get. And I'm saying that with
Yeah.
much compassion for anybody listening and being like, fuck you, Pierre-Etienne. I never asked for that cancer. Yeah, of course. I understand that. This is not something I wish on anybody. And I know that this is not something you brought onto yourself, but understand that if we don't listen to our bodies, then our bodies will need to get louder and louder and louder.
Hmm.
Right. So for us to be able to just listen, communicate, pay attention to what it's saying. And because once we witness it, once we listen to it, that's when the shift happens, right? That's when that nervous system is like, okay, I don't need to yell anymore. I can restore that balance. You've heard me, you heard the message, right? Pain is a messenger. Like I've been teaching to pain management to nurses, and like this is it. Like the goal is not to make it go away.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
goal is
Why do you want
to
to shoot the messenger? You don't want
yeah,
to get you away
exactly.
from pain.
Messenger. Like, this is I was actually taught by some of my teachers. They were like, careful, because if you make the pain go away, you're gonna lose the message. And that's what too many people are doing nowadays. It's like pop, 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 and then you don't get the message. And so what's the solution here? Again, bandwidth, right? Can I actually learn to sit with it or sit with some of it? And there's ways and tools and skills for you to be able to build bandwidth and hold it
So
in a way.
how do you work with people in real time then to lean into their anxiety or their fear of abandonment, whatever it might be? Like, how do you support them in real time to just make more room and space for that? Like, could you give us some insight into that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important, there's two misconceptions that a lot of people are dealing with when it comes with pain, but I think it applies to a lot of other things, which is um, I don't have control over it and it's never going to go away. And so when we work with people, we try to address this too. And so we sometimes I'm laughing because sometimes one of the exercises I teach people how to make their pain just slightly worse. And it might be a little counterproductive,
Mm,
but for all the people who are like, no, I don't control it. And it's like, but that's weird because you were at a six and we took a couple of minutes and then now you're at an eight. So your body is listening. So misconception one, you don't have control over it. This is gone. And number two, it's never going to go away. Then we try to work around like the idea of leaning into it, but not diving into it. If you're going to go swim, you're not going to, and you don't know what the water is like,
mm,
and you don't know what's in the water, you don't know the water temperature, you're not going to throw yourself in there. What you're going to do, you're going to dip a toe, and then maybe you're going to put your feet, and then up your ankles. And you're going to try to, slowly, slowly get used to the water temperature and to being in the water. And you're not going to throw yourself, in the deep end of the pool. You're going to go into the shallow end first. We do the same thing in that emotional exploration.
mm,
People, I think some people may have that misconception that if I do the healing, it has to be intense, it has to be big, I have to throw myself in there and I have to feel all of it. No, I don't think so. There's a place and a time for these peak experiences. I do think they're amazing. You were mentioning breath work. Breath work can bring quite a lot. I practice and I teach breath work and I love it. And I don't think that's for everybody. And I don't think that's suitable for everybody all the time. Because sometimes people are holding so much that I think being gentle, slow, will help them to actually feel safe enough to connect to it. Like
mm.
you can't force your nervous system to feel safe. Know
Yeah.
what I mean?
I think the majority of the time it is the soft, subtle, because that's actually a lot easier to integrate also.
For sure. Yeah, at all levels is better. So just going back to that metaphor, that image of like if you're gonna start to swim, like start slowly, slowly. There's the same thing for your emotions. Can you learn and can you practice? And that's what I do, and that's what typically somatic practitioners, among others, will do is like teaching people how to titrate. Titration is really that concept of like little by little,
Yeah,
right?
build on successes.
Exactly. Just a little bit and then they just come back. A little bit and then just come back. And by doing so, what are you doing? You're starting to create some wiggle room, right? It's like, oh, I can actually, I'm not stuck. I can feel a little bit of it. And it wasn't overwhelming and I didn't get messed up or stuck or dysfunctional for the rest of the day or for the rest of the week. And therefore I'm okay potentially. I'm probably more okay for me to revisit that. So that's what I do. For me, what I've realized over the years, and I used to work in very cathartic, intense ways. May I be forgiven for what I didn't know, uh, because I've realized, and maybe it's just my style and what I needed, talking about teaching what we need the most. I needed that gentleness in my healing journey. I needed the opportunity to feel safe, feeling things, and then feeling more and more and more. Going back to the training, it's like, yeah, if you're gonna bench press, you're not gonna start with like 200 pounds or like, or 100 kilos on the first try. You start small. And then as the muscles become stronger and stronger, then you start to go deep, you start to lift more and more. It's the same thing for your emotional journey. You start small, chunks, digestible chunks. One of my teacher was from the Trauma Resource Institute, which is very much inspired by somatic experiencing, um, which is around like, really very important players when it comes to trauma healing. Um, Used to tell me, if you're going to eat an apple, why would you shove an apple down your throat? Because you're going to choke on it. That's what most people do I think, with healing and emotional processing. Like they go and they find themselves with people telling them it's okay, it's safe. Just feel it right now. Feel it. Open your heart. Come on. Come on. You can do it. And it's like, let's build it up and let's build it up. And what you're doing here is just like, and that person is choking on it. Instead, why don't you just slice it?
Yeah.
Slice, take a slice, chew it, swallow it, digest it. Oh, I can breathe. I'm okay. And maybe even it was a little tasty, and it's like, all right, let's go for the rest of that apple.
Uh-huh.
And so that's why I'm saying for people to be able to pace themselves and to find spaces where there's an opportunity to just slice things off, have a little tasting of like what it feels like for you to feel that sadness, what it feels like for you to feel that anger, and then realizing that, actually it wasn't that bad. Oh, actually I'm feeling better right now. My back pain is less. Oh, notice how I have less pressure in my forehead, etc., etc., etc. Right? It's your body then is starting to then will tell you, look, you're on the right track. Let's keep going, but at the pace that feels safe enough.
How can that choking on the apple, can that look different for different people? Imagine it can. But what are the signs that that apple is being forced down? Obviously, when things generally don't change, but I'm at festivals, I'm seeing workshops, and there are some clear signs when people are having these big, um, for
Release it.
me, for me, signs that like there's too much too soon. Um,
Yeah.
and it's kind of, it looks out of control. It's very easy to see it from that point of view when it's big, but it can look completely the opposite, and it's harder to sense. Well, maybe depends who you are.
I do think it takes a trained eye to be
Yeah,
able to see it and to understand. I mean, that, as I said, I train practitioners because I want to make sure practitioners know what they're looking at. And at the same time, as much as you can train yourself, because it's a subjective experience, the only person who knows truly is the person you're working with.
yeah,
So I remember at times I've had people who it didn't look like they were going through a lot, but then I just checked with them and they were like, I'm
yeah,
freaking out,
yeah,
and I was like, oh shoot, I missed it. And there was not that many signs because they were so frozen, you know, and they were so paralyzed with fear
yeah,
that initially, and I'd like to think I got a little better over the years, but I didn't catch that. And vice versa. I would have people who were literally flopping like fishes out of the water, like full body tremors, and like it looked like they were having a seizure. And I was like, oh shit, 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 I need to turn it down or I need to just stop it. And then I would check and they were like, I'm good. I feel so great right now. Finally, I can, so I guess to answer your question, it's like ask your client,
yeah,
ask that person. Don't assume that you know better and they know better. But having said that, some people will not know actually what they're connecting to. And so it's important for us. That's why we train. That's why we train on reading the nervous system. That's why we explain people. That's why we need to accompany. And I was trained personally to be half a step behind my client or my clients. It's like I don't lead you. I'm not I'm not in front of you and you follow me. I'm right behind you. And sometimes I like to say I'm a glorified cheerleader. That's what I do. I teach people, I remind them they're designed to heal. Yes, I have some tools and skills and models and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, it's very much like, it's okay. Let's do it. Like there was many years ago, one of my mentors um, told me something it took me a long time to understand. He was like, well, our job consists in when your client is in front of that scary wall of fire and they don't know what to do, your job is to put a fireproof jacket on them, put your fireproof jacket on, grab their hand, and take a step forward, you know. And initially I was like, I'm not sure I understand what they're saying. Like, you know, many years later, almost 20 years later, I'm like, oh, that's it. For me to go with them into this hole, into this dark space that used to be so scary that they don't want to go there alone. And so for us to be able to go there as also as the person who guarantees that it's like, hey, by the way, I'm holding onto the rope, and I'm not letting you go. And if at any point of time we need to get out of it, you just say the word. Or if at any point of time I see some of the cues and some of the signs that it's becoming counterproductive, I'll take that executive decision and I'll just pull us out of there and shift, towards something that may be more helpful, that will help us restore safety. But yeah, it's the body doesn't lie,
Yes,
like you will see it. You will see it in their eyes, you will see it in their skin tone, you will see it in how their body moves or stops moving.
for sure.
But that's a language. That's a language that I think for anybody who's serious about facilitating this kind of work, I feel like it's a must. Like, learning the language of the nervous system seems quite foundational for me. Like otherwise, what? You're just gonna trying to reframe and talk about things and
Well, yeah,
sure,
what's your
that's
lens
perfect.
that you're seeing things through, right? We all have them, and if it's not the nervous system and how the body moves through life and walks,
Your
dances.
these lenses, of course, yeah, these lenses and your perspective will always be influenced by the state of your nervous system. So if your nervous system is in a state of survival, it's going to be very difficult for you to have a positive outlook on things. It's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, for you to be creative, for you to be present, right? To be focused, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm just talking about mentally speaking. And I think that's the important piece of the puzzle here is like, sure, the story is important, but for me, the story comes after we settle your nervous system. We may start with the story, and that's kind of like, a typical outline, I think, of a beautiful healing process would be we start with a story. That's a springboard for us
Mm,
to be able to explore the inner realities, what your body's been holding on to. That's not the only path. There's as many paths to healing as there are human beings. And yet I find it to be like such a powerful and liberating way, which is like after we've explored the story, then let's dive deeper into how is your body experiencing that. And once we've settled that nervous system, then we can come back to that story.
yeah,
And one of the key questions we tend to ask in this process is towards the end of a session, after you say you've settled, for all the practitioners listening here, after you've settled your client's nervous system or the nervous system of that group, an interesting question can be like, from that place of safety and of whatever it is that you came back to, are there any new thoughts, idea, or beliefs related to that issue, related to your father, to your mother, to blah, blah, blah? Is there any? And you'd be amazed. Like 90+% of the people are going to be like, well, actually, yeah. Now I can connect to the learning. Now I can have a wider perspective on things because I'm not reacting to it. I'm able to be with it, to sit with it, and I have the blindfold is gone. Like I can actually see, like for me, for example, what comes up is my father. I used to be very angry at my father. And and I'm giving you the very short version here, once I was able to sit with that anger, process that anger, I was able to see him in very different ways. I started to see the hurt man that he was, like he got hurt by his father and his father got hurt by his father. It's like, fucking generations of hurt men,
yeah,
here. And so I was like, oh, that's why. That's why at times it
yeah,
was so scary. Not because he wanted to, but because he didn't feel safe enough, because he was
yeah.
triggered.
Not because you deserved it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That has nothing, it was about me, you
Yeah,
know. But for me, but I needed to be able to diffuse that anger to be able to see him from a place of compassion. Does he
Mm,
get on my nerves every now and then? Oh, for sure. But there's no, it's interesting for me, there's no more fear of like, there's no more of that little boy who's like, is he gonna yell at me? Is he gonna do this? Is he gonna do that? It was like, oh shit, I see you. I see you now. I have more compassion for him, and even I even have sadness, right, for like everything he's been through, And so, but for that, I needed to reset my nervous system. I needed to be able to, yeah, let go of all this, diffuse. I don't know about all these triggers, but many of these triggers, you know, so that I can see him differently, so I can see that situation differently.
mm. Yeah, thank you for bringing that. You've provided a lot here and a lot for people to digest and to lean into, I believe. Um, I do want to touch upon like the accountability as anyone facilitating, holding space for others in a healing capacity that is allowing people to, yeah, um, go into these aspects of themselves that they feel is a challenge for. So what would your not advice, but like what are some prerequisites or where do you direct people other than the containers you provide to facilitate more well to coach coaches essentially? What do you want us to speak to that about? What do you think is really important to consider and for to just call people into? Because I know how passionate you are about this.
They, for me, it's very simple. I believe that the primary medicine that a facilitator can bring to the table is their own regulated nervous system.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. And I'm saying that because I've trained many therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, mental health professionals who, God bless them, were very knowledgeable and very good at what they do in their field. And and yet so many of them were completely disembodied. And so they were able to analyze that situation. But once we get into once we go deeper into that dance with these shadows, I don't want you to be my guide. Like I can see the anxiety, in that person. Their own nervous system was not regulated. So at the risk of sounding cliche, once again, it's like you please don't guide anybody in places we haven't been. I live about 10 minutes away from a big canyon and the deserts in Cairo here. I'm not going to take people in the Egyptian desert, like, and drive for a few hours in there and not knowing how to come back. And I feel like that's the same thing for facilitators here. You can only take people as far as you've been yourself. And I feel like that should be common sense. And
Mm.
yet, and yet I
Can you
see it.
can you speak a bit more about that? Because I get it, but also you're not going to have gone everywhere. That
No,
so,
for sure. But for example, uh, let's go back to mm, let's go back to my father because that's a big one for me.
mhm,
Uh, I've noticed many years ago when I would facilitate processes around father wound, my own triggers were activated, right? And so
yeah,
I'd like to think I was professional enough to be able to hold that space, but my bandwidth was reduced because I was caught up in my own shit. And so, and eventually throughout the years, as I did the work on myself, I found myself being able to show up very differently when addressing this particular issue. Right. And so obviously, as a facilitator, it's not about, again, it's not about the checklist of the issues that you need to deal with. Um, and you don't have, even though I've been working with people dealing with, again, AIDS and cancer and this, I haven't had AIDS, I haven't had cancer, and yet I've been able to show up fully with these people. But yet it's like, have I been in these places where I've felt the fear, where I felt the sadness, where I felt my grief, because I can't ask people to do that if I haven't done that myself.
yeah,
I have to be honest. It's like uh, that would be hypocritical and irresponsible and potentially dangerous. for me to tell somebody, let's just go deep into your sadness or your anger, if that's not something that you personally have done there.
Mm.
Because potentially there's going to be a bunch of landmines waiting for you. And and then if you get triggered, then who's driving that bus? Like
Mm.
that's not your client. And here I'm talking a lot of, one-on-one processes, but that applies equally to group processes, even more into group processes. Like if you're driving that bus and at some point you find yourself getting triggered and suddenly you're unable to see the road, well, when like everybody, right, is in a predicament, like is in a dangerous situation right now, and you might actually do more bad than good. You might hurt people, and
Mm.
that you like. I don't think we, unfortunately, talk about enough kind of the dark side of that healing world, which is all about peace and love and feel things and God is love. Yeah, God is love, but God is death and God is destruction as well. And so please understand that when you go into these spaces, I'm sure you've heard like some people can't take it. I know people who kill themselves, to put it bluntly, because they went to a retreat and they were invited to connect to their pain. That was not done in a way that was safe. That was not done in a way that allowed them to actually come back to shore. And then when they went back from that retreat, and it was just too much. They couldn't handle it. So that's why I was saying earlier, I would much rather, and I'm talking to any practitioner here, I would much rather you keep it light and gentle and safe rather than just try to explore terrains that where you're not that familiar, right? Like these deep trauma healing is an amazing thing, and at the same time, it can be a very dangerous things. So please don't be naive, and and remember that you have a responsibility as a facilitator to make sure that if you open that door, you're the one we need to guide that person back to that same door, or to the door on the other side,
Yeah.
uh, because otherwise you're doing more damage than anything. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Absolutely. I think at the crux of that is honesty and really being true to what one cannot hold and asking for support and not perpetuating these cycles of, fake it till you make it or doing it alone or like in these spaces, which is a lot of wounds actually for men, for myself, of like trying to get it right and just, just like really trying to hold it together, let's say, or just making sure I'm just leading without actually registering what's too much for me
Yeah.
and asking
It,
for that support.
yeah. I it is about honesty, but I feel like it's about integrity as well.
Well, that's
It,
consistency, consistently being honest, right?
yeah, absolutely. And that's the problem. It's like despite your good intentions, I think if you don't have this, if you're not sure, if you have not trained on that type of healing, then don't facilitate it. It's
Yeah,
just again, we live in a society where it's fake it till you make it. You were saying
yeah.
it's like me saying, okay, I'm confident I can drive a plane. I'm confident I can drive a plane. Does that make me more competent as a pilot? No. I have to study the instruction manual. I have to do a certain number of hours. And
Yeah.
that's the same thing. Like let's take healing,
But the
let's take healing
thing
more
is, I've
seriously.
done trainings. I was very disenfranchised by trainings because I've done them, and it's not supported me in how to actually provide this and bring this to the world. It is very informative and very educational. I learn through experience, and yes, doing things to an extent, but then knowing what I could have done more of or better, and learning from that quickly and adapting. And it's that ground which is so pivotal, and having people around you that can actually you know, see what you can't also, and to speak that truth.
Because maybe they were stepping stones. And I think any specifically for that kind of healing work and facilitating this kind of work, I think any training that's not experiential, again, you're just talking about the honey. You're not tasting it. You cannot, I would not, and I'm making it official here. I want to be clear. If you haven't practiced experientially if you haven't spent a certain number of hours guiding that type of work, getting feedback from your peers, getting
Yeah.
feedback from instructors, reviewing your sessions, reviewing your facilitation, learning, making plenty of mistakes, because this is how you learn in a safe learning environment, then you're not ready to
Yeah.
facilitate this kind of work. And I don't want to sound elitist here, but I think that's the problem today. It's like people sign up for a weekend and then they learn a bunch of stuff. It's very educational, it's very informative. But interestingly, that's what I'm saying. I have newly graduated people and psychology students who
Yeah.
come to me and they're like, I just graduated and now I'm starting to work with people, and I'm like, I don't feel equipped. Especially, and maybe to be fully honest, it's also because some people work with like Palestinians and that level of trauma that, that's maybe a conversation for another podcast, a level of trauma that it's unseen before. And so obviously, it's very difficult to have you need some expertise and training for that. But
Yeah.
what I'm saying is that on a regular basis, any meaningful training that's going to allow you to grow as a practitioner has to be experiential. And if
100%.
it's not
Yeah.
experiential, it can be interesting, it can be helpful. But for me, like, when I train people over a 6 month period, twice a week, we're gonna go into twice a week, actually 4 to 5 times a week, but two of these times is actual practice of facilitation and reviewing sessions and breaking down the demos and understanding what happened, what worked, what didn't work. This is, it's just like you took a driving lesson, and at the end of the lesson, the instructor will tell you, you need to chill on the braking, you need to just go a little smaller, pay attention to your rear view mirrors. Like, this is how you learn. I
Mm.
mean, I know this is how I learned too, experientially. So, so yeah,
It's
you need to
huge.
get.
It's huge and very overlooked. I know that. Like I come out of a yoga training, 200 hours in India, and we taught a class for 15 minutes. What's that? You're just learning about information. You're not it's such a big point and it's an obvious
Not
one, but it's
embodied.
everywhere. So that
It's
again,
not embodied,
it's not,
and
of
that's the
course.
point. It's indicational. It's informative. All the
Yeah.
words you're describing or mind oriented. They're just cognitive functions of the cognitive processes.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. When I say the primary medicine of a facilitator is their own regulated nervous system, I don't mean that they know a bunch of stuff.
Mm,
I mean, they are embodied into their body. They are connected to themselves. They know what they're feeling. Because we also know that if you're not connected to your own body, then your energetic boundaries will be a fucking mess. Like, you will find yourself, like, I see a lot of practitioners who, again, good heart, empathetic, and they lean into it, but because they're not connected to their body, then they get confused. They're like, oh, they're feeling all of their clients' pain and all the group pain. And then it's like, and then you come back from the retreat and you crash. Why do you crash? You crash because your energetic boundaries are not clear, bro. This is, and I've done it. You know what I mean? But that's the important piece of that puzzle. If I'm not connected to myself, then we know that I'm not going to be able, if I'm not feeling myself, if I don't have all the signals coming from my body telling me I'm okay, and this is my experience, this is what I'm feeling right now, and this is what they're feeling. If we become enmeshed, this is a disservice to everybody. Empathy is misunderstood at best, and sometimes it's actually, I think, hurtful, because people think I need to feel everything that person is going through,
mm,
um, and that's not what it's about.
mm. I think we get the download here.
All right.
Once you get the message, hang up the phone and sign up to a Pierre-Etienne course. Yeah, how can thank you so much for this. This has been such a beautiful window into your world, and I know the integrity you do hold and have because I know people who have you've really supported and level up their facilitation ultimately, and learning of themselves and deepening into their own sense of embodiment. So I hand on my heart, I appreciate you and yeah, it's needed, and everything you've touched upon today is deeply meaningful to me. So thank you. And Where can people find you and learn more about how to get involved with your work? I know you've got a retreat coming up in October. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, we have a few things here coming up. I mean, first, thank you, for the invitation. I always appreciate. I'm glad we got
Mm.
to drop in finally and to have that conversation. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for you. I'm familiar with the work, and I thank you for showing up like this with integrity and helping us to really spread that message. Uh, that I think is very important for people to hear, both in terms of people seeking healing and people who are wanting to facilitate healing, which is more and more people, I think, want to be of service. And yet to be of service, please understand that that also means healing yourself. And so for that, people can find me on my website, embodiedresilience.co or .co, embodiedresilience.co, also on my Insta at PE Vannier, which is the initials of my first name, PE Vannier, Vannier. On Insta, we have a couple of programs for people seeking self-healing. We have a 3-month program, which is the Embodied Resilience Self-Mastery Program, 3-month journey, experiential for facilitators who want to go deeper and really sharpen their facilitation skills and master the art of somatic trauma healing. We have the Embodied Resilience Mastery Program, which is a 6-month program. And we also have, not sure when that podcast is going to be out, but at the end of October, from the 22nd to the 26th of October in Dahab, Egypt, on the Sinai Peninsula, we'll have the Sinai immersion seeking sukoon. Sukoon is the Arabic word for peace and tranquility.
Mm.
That's also from that space of surrender, that we find healing. So from the 22nd to the 26th of October, 2025, we'll take 4 days of really building capacity, of doing inner work, and also really remembering that, yeah, and remembering, right? Remembering that we are being held, will be held in that beautiful and sacred land, um, which is, we literally in the footsteps of Moses. I mean, like this is like literally. When I mean sacred land, I really mean it. Sinai is very powerful, very special. So
Mm.
there are a lot of medicines in relating to that, to the land, to the sea. We'll be on a beautiful private villa in between the mountains of Sinai and the Red Sea. Private villa, private chef, and with a beautiful small group. And so we still have a few spots left. Anybody who's interested, in diving deeper, they're welcome to reach out to me.
Hmm. Yeah, beautiful. I will link everything to that and I'll make sure this is out before October. So yeah, calling more men and is it men?
No, that that
Men and women.
that that retreat is co-ed. So
Okay.
men and women. And we actually will be about 44 people. So relatively small container.
Okay. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
A pleasure in mine. Thank you so much for having me. Much love to you and to everybody.
Yes.